Put that down right now before I call the police." The words rang through the bright aisles of the downtown store, sharp and humiliating. Heads turned. Shoppers froze. And in that instant, Marcus Reed felt the ground sink beneath his feet. He had only walked into the store he owned, to check on things before closing. But instead of a warm greeting or basic respect, the new store manager, a stern-faced man named Greg Hollister, had mistaken him for a thief. Marcus blinked, stunned. He was holding a simple clipboard, running through the weekly inventory numbers like he always did. Yet Greg stormed toward him, face flushed, finger pointed like a weapon. "Don't play games with me," Greg barked, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "I know your type. Always sneaking around looking for what you can grab. Not in my store." His store. Marcus's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout it, to announce to every gawking customer that the deed, the business license, the entire foundation of this place was in his name. But his chest was too tight. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Don't let anger control you, son. The truth will reveal itself in time." Still, the sting of being called a criminal in the very place he had poured his life savings into was unbearable. The crowd whispered. A mother pulled her daughter closer. A teenage boy snickered and muttered something under his breath. And there Marcus stood, in his neatly pressed shirt, his company badge clipped to his belt, looking less like an owner and more like a man on trial. Greg stepped closer, now inches from his face. "You think you're clever, huh? What's in your pocket? Empty it. Now." Marcus's hands trembled. His pocket only held his phone, but the humiliation burned hotter than fire. "Sir, Marcus started, his voice breaking. "No," Greg snapped. "Don't try to talk your way out of this. People like you are always full of excuses." Those words, "people like you," sank like poison. A young cashier, a black girl barely 20, looked on, wide-eyed and torn. She knew Marcus. She had seen him in staff meetings, had heard his voice in conference calls. But fear kept her lips sealed. Greg pulled out his radio. "Security to aisle 5. Possible shoplifter." The word hit Marcus like a slap. Shoplifter. A man who had spent years working double shifts, saving every naira he earned in Nigeria before moving to the US with a dream. A man who skipped meals to invest in his vision of building something for his community. A man who signed every check, paid every bill, and gave jobs to over 20 employees. And now, in his own store, he was branded a thief. Security guards appeared, walking fast, radios crackling. Customers craned their necks to watch. Marcus's face burned with shame. He wanted to shout, "I am the owner. I am the one who built this place. How dare you?" But Greg was faster. "This man was caught snooping around," he declared, puffing his chest as if he were the hero of some movie. "Check his pockets." He was about to walk out with stolen goods. The guards looked uncertain. One of them, an older man named Frank, frowned. "Greg, I think that's Mr. Reed." But Greg waved him off. "No, don't be fooled. He probably lied his way in here. I've seen this before. They act like they belong until you catch them." Marcus's lips parted, his voice shaking. "Greg, I am Marcus Reed." Greg cut him off. "Save it. I'm calling the cops." And with that, Greg pulled out his phone. Marcus felt the world spin. His own store. His own employees. His own hard work, and he was being reduced to nothing more than a stereotype, a suspect, a target. The young cashier finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Greg, I think you're making a mistake. Stay out of this." Greg barked at her. "Unless you want to join him." Marcus swallowed hard. He could fight. He could scream. But his heart said something else. Let the truth speak when the time is right. And so, in front of flashing phones, accusing stares, and whispered slurs, Marcus Reed, the rightful owner, stood in silence as security circled him, waiting for the police to arrive. The flashing red and blue lights bled across the store's glass windows, painting the walls in chaos. Within minutes, 2 officers pushed through the sliding doors, their presence heavy and commanding. "Where's the suspect?" the taller one asked, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. Greg wasted no time. He pointed a finger at Marcus like he had caught a criminal in the act. "That's him right there. Tried to sneak merchandise out. I caught him red-handed." All eyes in the store shifted again toward Marcus. Mothers tightened their grip on their children's hands. Phones hovered in the air, recording. The silent jury of the public was already casting its judgment. Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms open. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because he knew how quickly situations like this could turn deadly. "Officers," Marcus began, his voice calm but steady, "there's been a mistake. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm the owner of this store. A laugh slipped from Greg's mouth, sharp and mocking. Owner? That's rich. If you're the owner, then I'm the President of the United States. The officers exchanged glances, skeptical. The shorter one pulled out a small notepad. Sir, do you have identification on you? Marcus nodded, reaching slowly for his wallet. His heart thumped with each movement. He handed over his driver's license, his hands trembling slightly. The officer studied it. This says Marcus Reed, all right. Address checks out. But it doesn't prove you own the store. Marcus swallowed hard. Check the business license. My name is on it. I can show you payroll records, lease agreements, bank statements, whatever you need. Greg jumped in quickly, his face flushed with indignation. Don't let him sweet-talk you. I've seen this trick before. They pretend to be someone important, confuse you with paperwork until you let them slip away. Look at his clothes. Does he look like an owner? He was skulking around like a thief. Marcus's fists tightened at his sides. He was wearing a collared shirt and slacks, the same outfit he wore nearly every day while managing operations. But Greg's words dug into him like barbs, twisting perception against reality. The officers looked at Marcus again, measuring him. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Words like liar and stealing floated through the air. Finally, one officer sighed. All right, let's step outside. We'll sort this out at the station if we have to. Marcus's chest burned. At the station? For what? For standing in my own store? The taller officer's tone hardened. Sir, we're not going to argue here. Step outside. Greg smirked, folding his arms with the confidence of a man who believed he had won. Told you, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus felt rage clawing at him. He wanted to shout, to tear down every wall of injustice pressing against him. But deep inside, a different fire burned, a fire of resolve. If they wanted to see proof, then proof they would get. He turned to the officers, his voice clear and unwavering despite the lump in his throat. You want proof? Come with me. The crowd parted as Marcus walked toward the back office, the officers following. Greg trailed close behind, shaking his head as though he were watching a fraudster attempt his final act. Inside the office, Marcus went straight to the filing cabinet, unlocked it with his key and pulled out a thick folder. He slapped it on the desk. Articles of incorporation, Marcus said firmly. State license, IRS filings. Every single document with my signature. This is my store. I built it from the ground up. The officers leaned over the papers, scanning them carefully. The younger one looked uncertain now, his expression shifting. But Greg wasn't finished. That doesn't mean anything, Greg spat. He probably forged those. He probably conned his way into this paperwork. I'm telling you, this man is dangerous. Look at how defensive he is. Marcus's voice cracked, raw with pain. Defensive? You dragged me through my own aisles, called me a thief, tried to strip me of my dignity in front of everyone. And now, when I show proof, you still doubt me? Silence weighed heavy in the office. The officer stood caught between the evidence on the desk and the venom in Greg's voice. Finally, the older officer spoke, his tone cautious. Mr. Reed, these documents seem legitimate. But we'll need to verify them officially before making any conclusions. Greg slammed his hand against the wall. This is unbelievable. You're really going to fall for this? He's playing you. The young cashier who had witnessed everything from the start finally stepped forward. Her voice trembled but carried strength. It's true. He's the owner. I've seen him in meetings. He signs our paychecks. He hired me. This is his store. Greg spun around, his face twisting. Stay out of this, girl. But it was too late. A spark had been lit. Other employees began to murmur from the doorway. One by one they nodded. He's the boss, one said. He's the one who gave us jobs, another added. Greg's face paled. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. But he quickly masked it with anger. They're just covering for him. They're all in on it. Marcus stared at him, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with both fury and sorrow. Why, Greg? Why did you come at me like this? Was it the color of my skin? Was it the way I look? Or was it that deep down, you could never believe a man like me could own something like this? The question hung in the air like a blade. The officers shifted uncomfortably. Employees stared at Greg. Even customers who had followed the commotion now looked uneasy. Greg opened his mouth to respond. But at that exact moment, another voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. Is there a problem here? The room fell silent as a well-dressed man stepped into the office. His suit was sharp, his presence undeniable. This was Mr. Langston, the regional director from corporate headquarters, and the one man with enough authority to settle the matter for good. Mr. Langston takes control, but Greg won't back down without a fight. Marcus will face his ultimate test, not just to prove ownership, but to expose Greg's lies and prejudice once and for all. The office seemed to shrink when Mr. Langston walked in. He was tall, silver-haired, with a measured calm that commanded respect. His sharp gray suit was accented with a dark blue tie, and his polished shoes clicked against the tiled floor. He carried an aura of authority, not loud, not aggressive, but the kind that silenced a room simply by existing. Greg immediately straightened up, adjusting his posture like a child caught misbehaving. "Mr. Langston, sir. Perfect timing. We've got a serious situation here. This man," he jabbed a finger at Marcus, "was pretending to be the owner. Tried to scam everyone. I stopped him before it got worse." Langston's eyes narrowed. He looked at Marcus, then at the pile of documents on the desk, then back to Greg. His voice was low, steady, and sharp as glass. "And who told you to detain him, Greg?" Greg blinked. "Well, no one, sir. But he was sneaking around, acting suspicious. I had to protect the store's integrity." The word integrity rolled off Greg's tongue like poison. Mr. Langston didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Marcus, studying him carefully. "Mr. Reed, is it?" Marcus nodded slowly, holding his gaze. "Yes, Marcus Reed. I'm the owner. This is my store." A flicker of recognition crossed Langston's face. He leaned in closer, scanning the papers Marcus had laid out. His hand brushed across the state license, the incorporation documents. He lifted the payroll sheet and glanced at the signatures. Then he looked up at Marcus with a faint smile. "Yes, I remember approving your application when you franchised this branch. You've been on my quarterly calls. Marcus Reed. I know exactly who you are." Marcus exhaled, relief washing through him like water over fire. But before he could speak, Greg's voice erupted. Wait. You can't just take his word for it. People forge papers, sir. They lie. I'm telling you, he doesn't belong here. Doesn't belong here." The words cut deep, though Greg likely didn't even realize how much weight they carried. Mr. Langston's jaw tightened. He turned his eyes on Greg, his tone firm. "Greg, are you accusing your store owner of fraud? In front of me? With no evidence?" Greg hesitated, his face turning red. I was just trying to do my job, sir. Protect the store. You know how things can be." "How things can be?" Langston repeated slowly, his brows raising. His voice dropped to a cold, deliberate pace. "Greg, what I see here is an employee humiliating his boss in front of staff, customers, and the police. I see you creating a circus instead of following protocol. And worst of all, I see you projecting your assumptions onto a man who outranks you in every possible way." The officers exchanged uneasy looks. The younger one cleared his throat. "Seems pretty clear to me now, sir. This was a misunderstanding." But Marcus shook his head. "No," he said quietly, his voice trembling but steady. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is when someone mistakes your name. Or forgets your order at a restaurant. This was humiliation. This was prejudice." The employees standing in the doorway murmured in agreement. The young cashier wiped her eyes. The customers, who had been recording everything, whispered among themselves, phones still raised. Greg's lips curled in frustration. "Oh, come on. You're really going to turn this into a race thing? I don't care if he's black, white, purple, or green. I called it like I saw it." Marcus locked eyes with him. "No, Greg. You didn't call it like you saw it. You called it like you believed it should be. You saw a black man in a place you didn't think he belonged, and instead of asking questions, you put me in chains of suspicion." The room went still. Even Mr. Langston leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable, as though weighing Marcus's words. Then Langston stood straighter, his voice carrying finality. "Greg, I'll be speaking with HR immediately. You've crossed a line. Your behavior is not only unprofessional, it's damaging to the company. Effective today, consider yourself suspended until further notice." Greg's mouth dropped. "Suspended? Sir, you can't." "I can," Langston interrupted, his tone like steel. "And I just did." The shock hit Greg like a slap. His face contorted, eyes wild as he looked around the room, searching for allies, but none came. The employees stared back with cold disapproval. The officers avoided his gaze. Even the customers who had been curious spectators now looked at him like a pariah. Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions flood through him. Vindication. relief, but also exhaustion. Because he knew this was just one battle in a war that never seemed to end. Langston turned back to Marcus, his voice softening. "Mr. Reed, on behalf of the company, I apologize for what you endured today. No one should have to defend their right to stand in their own store." Marcus swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. "Apologies don't erase scars, Mr. Langston. But I'll accept it, as long as it comes with action." Langston nodded gravely. "It will. I'll see to it personally." But before Marcus could respond, Greg exploded again. "This isn't over. You think you've won, Reed? You embarrassed me today, but I swear you'll regret this. People like me built this store's reputation, not people like you." He stormed toward the door, face crimson, spittle flying from his lips. The words "people like you" lingered in the air like smoke from a fire. Marcus didn't chase after him. He stood tall, shoulders squared, letting the venomous words pass over him like wind against stone. But deep inside he knew this fight wasn't finished. Greg wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat quietly. And Marcus also knew one thing for certain. The next battle would be even uglier. Because when hatred is cornered, it lashes out harder. Greg isn't done. He'll try one last desperate move to drag Marcus down, but this time the community, the law, and undeniable truth will bring the final blow of justice. Greg didn't stay quiet. The very next week he tried to smear Marcus online, posting lies in neighborhood forums, whispering to customers that the real story hadn't come out. He even filed a complaint, claiming Marcus had threatened him. But what Greg didn't count on was the fact that the truth had already gone viral. Remember those customers with their phones? Their videos spread across social media like wildfire. The images of Marcus being accused, of him standing tall while Greg ranted, of Mr. Langston stepping in, they reached thousands, then millions. Hashtags filled with outrage. Community leaders showed up to the store in support. Local news stations ran the story. Black business owner mistaken for a thief in his own store. Suddenly Marcus wasn't fighting alone. He had an army behind him, customers, neighbors, and strangers who had seen enough of this injustice. When HR concluded their investigation, the outcome was swift. Greg was terminated. Not suspended, not transferred, fired. The next day, Marcus walked into his store to find a line of customers waiting outside, applauding him as he unlocked the doors. Some carried signs, "We stand with Marcus." Others simply wanted to shake his hand, buy something, show support. Marcus looked at them, his chest heavy with both pride and pain. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every time someone was underestimated, mistreated, or accused simply for existing in a place they rightfully belonged. He stood on the counter, speaking to the crowd with a steady voice. "I built this store with my own two hands. And yes, I was called a thief. I was treated like I didn't belong. But let me tell you something, I belong everywhere I earned the right to be. And so do you. Don't ever let anyone steal your worth with their words." The room erupted in applause. Customers clapped. Employees cried. Even the officers who had once doubted him came back that day, not with suspicion but with respect. And Greg? He vanished, his name forever tied to the shame of his actions. But Marcus? He rose higher. His business grew, his community rallied around him, and his story became a reminder that no matter how many times the world tries to write you off, truth has a way of writing you back in. Would you have handled it like Marcus did? Or would you have fought back harder? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget, subscribe to Racism Exposed TV for more powerful stories where justice has the final say.